Welcome everyone to the 2022 product release number 1. I'm Dominic Aiello, the marketing manager here at Kershaw. And throughout the course of this week, we're going to have several great guest appearances. But I'm joined by an in-house designer, Andrew Keel. Welcome, Andrew.
Hey, what's up, Dom? What's up, guys?
Thanks for joining us. Well, I'm curious, and I'm sure our viewers are curious. What are you carrying?
Today I am carrying the HIGHBALL XL. Great knife. I love the action on it. It's a lot of fun to play with.
That's a great choice. And before that, we had the HIGHBALL, correct?
That's correct. Yeah. What about you? What are you carrying?
I have the Launch 1, the camo version.
Nice.
This has found itself in my pocket a lot lately. I mean, I'm a big fan of just the Launch series in general. There's something about just being able to hit that push button and it comes out with authority and it just feels great in the hand. Speaking of autos, we have a new one for this year. Let's start off with that and tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, for sure. Dude, I'm so stoked. We've got the Kershaw Launch 14 right here. This auto is, it's really cool. We're doing some things with this that we haven't done with autos in the past. The first thing is that it's pretty obvious. It's a cleaver. So it has a much larger blade on there. It's still CPM 154, blade steel, black wash finish. But what stands out to this knife for me the most is that we did a 2-part front handle. When we were working on designing it, we realized that the locking mechanism and the spring are all contained up on the front half of the knife, that front half of the front handle. So we had that whole back area of the front handle as just this open canvas. And so we thought, why don't we put carbon fiber on that? So we did a split material front handle. If you look at the back, it's all aluminum across the back there, but a lot of the details in that echo what's happening on the front side. Also, that's, like I said, that's USA made. And actually, I had a detail I wanted to call out to you. Sometimes our customers will ask us, we put anything that's US made, we put an American flag on the back. And people have sometimes asked about like why is it facing the way that it's facing? And it's like US military thing. It's something that we want to do as well. Like the American flag's never retreating. So if you look at it, it's angled this way. So if you imagine someone carrying it, like charging into battle with the flag caught in the wind behind them, it would be aligned like that towards the front of the handle. So that's why we do that.
Yeah, it's always a fun piece of information to share why the flag is oriented the way it is.
Yeah, I thought so. Yeah, so I'm really excited to talk about some of our stuff that's starter series this year. The best part about these, we've got 3 new starter series items coming to you guys, and I'm excited. They all have HCR13 MOV steel, which is an upgrade from what we normally use with our starter series, and that's really exciting. So even if you're carrying a budget knife, this year we're giving you a pretty good steel on that, and that's super exciting. So the first one we got is the Kershaw flatbed. It's assisted liner lock. It has a great Tonto blade shape on there. 2 things I really love about this knife. It's super comfortable in the hand, and you have glass wool nylon handles that help with that, but you also have this really great thumb ramp right there. Anytime you have a working knife that you really want good purchase on, I think a thumb ramp can help a lot with that. Just whether you're like cutting through rope or zip ties, whatever, like it can be really great for that. I also love this steel inlay on the front handle there. It's got a black wash finish on it, and it just adds a really cool pop to the design. And we even echoed this pattern on the back in the glass filled nylon handle there. You can see that. And that's it's just a pretty cohesive design, super comfortable in hand. Going to be a great work knife.
And what I love about the design on that one, there was 2 things that I love personally is the thumb ramp adds to the aesthetic, in my opinion.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Sweet. The next one we've got is the Jetpack. Also assisted starter series. This one's got a Tonto blade on there. It's really kind of a wedge shaped blade. This one's a really fun one for me. I love that you have this liner lock knife, but you've got 3 sections of color on there with these plastic handle scales. And it's really fun. I love that the backspacer comes through on this lanyard hole right here. It pops through the liner right there. Super comfortable knife. And one that also a workhorse, a little bit smaller than the flatbed, but I really like having those kind of islands of handle scale on top of the liner.
Right on. And for our viewers that may not understand what you mean by the starter series, what exactly is the starter series, say, versus, you know, like the launch series?
Sure. So we have several different series in like the Kershaw brand, and the starter series is kind of like it's our starter, right? If you're starting with knives, that's what we would kind of direct you towards. Those are typically going to be more budget friendly, but also if you just want a knife that you can use and abuse and you don't have to worry about, you know, getting it scratched up, those are usually really good for that. They're knives that generally, not only are they on a budget, but just with the overall aesthetic of the knife, they'll look really good, even if they've been like beat up and stuff like that. So, yeah.
Sure. Yeah. If you're in construction or the trades, or, you know, you lose knives a lot, they're affordable, they're going to work great, they're easy to sharpen. And if you lose them or you break them or whatever the case may be, you know, you're not out $100.
Yeah. And I think it's important to emphasize too, that even with our starter series, like, they're not cheap knives. Like, it's like a good quality knife, even though it is more, you know, more designed for someone on a budget than, say, like the Launch 14.
For sure. And, you know, it's always backed by our limited lifetime warranty, just like any other knife.
Yeah,
so,
which is awesome. So, yeah, so that's the Kershaw Jetpack. Now we've got the Kershaw Salvage. This one is a frame lock, also assisted, with stonewash finish on there. This is another one that it's slimmer than or more narrow, from like the top to bottom of the handle than the flatbed, but still super comfortable in the hand, something that's going to be another good workhorse knife. This blade is more of like a centered like spear point or reverse Tonto blade shape. So it's going to give you a really good piercing tip on there. The flipper's super comfortable. We've got these OD green overlays, glass fill nylon overlays on the front and the back that make it comfortable, add some good detail, will help your grip a little bit. So yeah, that's the Kershaw Salvage. Okay, let's move on. This is the Kershaw Lithium. And this, not a starter series knife. It also is assisted though, and is a frame lock. This is probably my top 3 for this year. Big fan of this knife. Super usable blade. You've got that reverse Tonto. It's going to be super, super good for your EDC tasks, opening boxes, cutting zip ties, whatever, that sort of thing. Assisted, so it opens really quick. What I love, probably, it's a toss-up for me. There's 2 things about this knife that really make it shine for me. One, I love the split material handle. You'll notice on several knives from this year, we've got multiple material handles, and it makes the knife look really cool. Yeah, we got steel, and then we've got that glass filled nylon up there, and then we've got it the same on the back, which is really fun. But you still get the lockup of a frame lock, which is really fun. You also got a deep carry pocket clip on there, works front and back. But other than the split material handle, what I love the most about this knife is the details. The details have been executed so well on this knife that I honestly think like the pictures or the videos of it are not going to do it justice. You need to get one of these in your hand, and you can just feel the level of detail, the chamfers, the little edges on here on the spine of the blade where that jimping is, the jimping and the chamfers on the lock bar make this knife feel so good in the hand. And I really, really love that about this knife. And you can just really see like that, even though it's like gonna cost a little bit more than the ones that are on a budget, you can feel the attention to detail in this, and it's worth every penny. I love this knife so much.
And that's a great point. Generally, you know, if you go from the starter series to, you know, something that's not in the starter series, what you get is, you know, you certainly get some upgraded materials, of course, but you get more of those fine details, right?
Yeah, for sure. And it's not bashing the starter series. Those are like really good quality knives too, for sure. I would carry any of these starter series knives. But there's some of the details in this one that we got to do because it was a little bit elevated from that.
Of course, yeah. So when you say split handle material, you're talking like the Launch 14, where the front handle is 2 different pieces, right?
Exactly. Yep, 2 different pieces. In the same, we've got that, like I said, you've got the steel here and that glass filled nylon up top right there.
Excellent.
Yeah. So the next one we've got is the Kershaw Inception. This is a knife really designed for enthusiasts. So it comes in definitely a higher price point than the other ones, but this is designed to be, if you're a knife enthusiast, like this is for you. It's a knife that you can play with and flip all day. It runs on KVT ball bearing washer, so it's super smooth to open. I love this knife because kind of the lithium, you know, has more of like a sci-fi look to it maybe, but this is one that is a lot more like is pulled back and it's supposed to be a lot simpler. It's steel liner lock, and over that you've got G10 handle scales, and it feels awesome. Feels awesome in the hand. That G10 texture is amazing, great grip. You've also got some really cool details in the pivot, and then in this screw, this fastener on the back also doubles as a lanyard hole. Just like some small, beautiful details over a really simple knife. Feels great in the hand. Like I said, the main focus on this is on that action, something that you can flip all day. You got D2 steel on there as well, so it's elevated blade steel. Super fun knife. Yeah.
And what's the blade finish on that?
It's a stonewash blade finish.
Nice. Yeah, I've flipped that a few times, and you're not kidding when you say it's a smooth knife. It opens really smooth, very quickly for how smooth it is, and the shut action is really smooth as well.
Yeah, yeah, it's a really good one. If you're into those kind of knives, then this is definitely one for you. All right.
So before we go on to the next one, tell our viewers a little bit about the design process from, you know, taking an idea and making it an end product. What's involved with that?
Yeah. So usually at the beginning, we'll have kind of like a brief. So we'll be asked, hey, you know, make us a automatic that has a cleaver blade, right? Or something like that. Sometimes that's one way that it'll go, and then we'll move into the design process, right? Other times I'm just like playing around, sketching, you know, and then I'll be like, hey, what do you guys think about this? And we'll, you know, if they like it, then we'll move forward with that. That's usually how that will go. Some combination of those. Usually we have kind of an idea of the price point, the materials we want to use. That's generally kind of in focus from the beginning. You know, we've got a pretty good idea of like the general, you know, what category that knife's going to fill, right? Whether it's like if we know it's going to be like an outdoor use knife or an EDC knife or an enthusiast knife, right? We kind of have an idea of like what category it goes into. And then we get more into the details of like, okay, what's this actually going to look like? And so from there, we'll go in and we'll do a lot of sketching, a lot of just like ideation, right? Trying to figure out what that's going to look like. For me, a big part of that obviously is like going and looking for inspiration, whether that's in, you know, cars, movies. You know, those are two I talk about a lot. Other, you know, obviously not knife, but like other products, like an iPhone or something, you know, something like that like already exists out there. A lot of times looking for those like detail cues and seeing what's like hot in the market, a lot of times will inform that part of the design process as well. So we go from ideation, and then where there's kind of like a second phase where you're like making models, like a physical model out of like foam or like a 3D print, that kind of like development. So we want to see, okay, how does this feel in the hand? That's really important, you know, because you're gonna be using this like all day. You want it to be something that feels real, it feels right, you know, in the hand. So we kind of go from there. After that, we'll go spend a lot of time in CAD, computer aided design. So that's all on the computer. We'll be drafting that up and building that out. And then from there, if we're on the US side of things, we'll go towards our R&D team, who will make physical prototypes for us, and they'll kind of dial it in for the US factory. If it's on the import side, we work with their R&D teams, kind of dial it in for their factories. And then, yeah, you know, months later, we have it here and we're sending it out to the public.
Yeah, I think that's something that's really important for the public to know is, you know, even if there is an import model, not only is there a lot of work that goes in with our staff here in our U.S. headquarters, like you said, sketching, design, laser printing, or a foam cutout. But then once we receive those, not only the prototype, but also the finished product, we have a whole inspection team here that goes through and quality controls those import models, the same as the U.S. models are quality controlled, correct?
Oh yeah, dude, our QC team here is amazing. I could not speak highly enough about them. They do such a good job and make my job really, really easy.
Okay, so what's next?
Cool. Well, we actually have a couple manuals we want to show you guys. Both of these use a double detent liner block system. So they're both slip joints, they're non-locking knives, but instead of your traditional slip joint, we have a double detent. So if you're familiar with ZT, the 0230 uses this. And this is a very similar mechanism to that. So this is the Kershaw Esteem. It's an import knife. I love, again, you know, as you can see, we got that split material theme running through pretty strong here. Something I really like about this, though, we used for that top material, that darker material there, a polished G10, which is really fun. And I think that kind of ties it a little bit into the traditionals that we did a couple of years ago, like the Culpeper and the Brandywine. Those are knives with polished G10, kind of a modern take on a traditional knife. And this is an even more maybe modern take on that. But man, I love this knife. The pops of color with that bronze PVD on the screws in there, the shape of the blade, that drop point shape. I really like the sweeping of the handle, the split material, even the glass filled nylon backspacer that gives you that lanyard hole right there. There's so many details on this that I really love. Something else too, a lot of traditional knives don't have a pocket clip, but this one does. It's an extra deep carry pocket clip that's kind of integrated into that back handle there. So it's still really sleek, very minimal and slim, but it's going to make this a really easy one to carry.
I think what you just said, kind of my favorite point about that model, is it's so slim, it's so lightweight. I feel like that really, you can have a lot more in your pocket and that not get in the way.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when this folds down, it's a pretty small package, but it's a great knife. I really love this design, and I'm really excited for people to start carrying it.
Excellent.
Sweet. So the next one we've got is the Kershaw Federalist. It's a toss-up probably between this and the Launch 14, but I think this is probably my favorite for the year. So many of these knives I love so much. So I am probably going to say that half of them are my favorite by the time we're done here. But this is a really fun one. USA made Kershaw, double detent slip joint. You got CPM 154 blade with a great clip point blade on there. And we've got micarta handle scales on this. Guys, this is so exciting for me. You know, one of the things I talked about, you know, we were talking about how we want to listen to the customers and how I talk about inspiration. You were trying to like see what's hot and where the trends are. I mean, micarta has been such an important material to the knife industry for a really long time, honestly. And it's definitely been hot in the past few years. And so it's been something where like, I feel like for the past few years, I've been like, okay, I want to make a knife with micarta. I want to make a knife with micarta. And finally we get to do it. And man, it is so cool. Actually, I want to show you guys, I've got in my pocket, one that's been carried for a really long time. And if you compare the two of them, the patina on that micarta, man, it is so fun. It's just like, you can tell you've been carrying it for a while. And that's just awesome. Micarta has got to be one of my favorite knife materials, and I'm so stoked that we're getting to use it.
Yeah, the nice thing about that patina is it adds character. It's unique. You know, how you hold the knife versus how the next person holds the knife is going to reflect in that patina, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I love that, you know, the first time, at least that I can think of, I believe this is the first time we've used micarta in a Kershaw, definitely the first time in a USA model. And the fact that it's a traditional like it is, I think is just so cool.
It's awesome. You know, about just like design for this, for a lot of these traditionals, but especially this one, yeah, I really kind of envision this as like Ernest Hemingway, like Old Man in the Sea kind of knife. So like up on my like design inspiration boards, I had these like pictures of this like old like lobsterman with a pipe in his mouth, or guys out like mending their nets. And that's really kind of what this knife like is to me in a lot of ways. And honestly, one of the perks of being a designer at Kershaw is that I get sometimes to carry the prototypes well before the knife is out on the market. So I've been carrying one of these for quite a while. And I've, you know, even though it's a slip joint, I think for me, a lot of times I see the slip joint and I'm like, oh, like, is that going to be like as secure as a locking knife? But, you know, I'm not working on a construction site. You know, I'm usually just opening boxes or letters or whatever with it. And so for most tasks that I've, you know, whether it's like, even with like stuff like getting food out of packages and stuff like that, you know, I've used my knife for a lot. And it held up so well and worked so well. And honestly, like for me, for my purposes, felt like it would still be really good as like a pretty like rugged use knife, even though it's a slip joint, which was really a fun discovery. One last detail I wanted to call out on this, Dom. We put a half stop in with this double detent, which is one partly a kind of safety thing because, you know, it is a slip joint non-locking. You kind of want a pause before you close it all the way. But also just like it adds that like extra little bit of quality to the knife. It feels really nice in the hand. So yeah, that's the Federalist.
Yeah, I like that knife a lot. It's certainly in my top 3 for the year of new models at this point. And I like you, I got to carry one for a while as well. And what I noticed is once you got the detent broke in a little bit, it was really easy to open with one hand. You know, where I've seen a lot of traditionals where you have to open them two-handed. Yeah. And I feel like that's where you guys really nailed it, as well as our production team on this one. You still have that half stop, which is important, but you're able to break through the double detent, get past that with your thumb if you really want to, and it's just so smooth and nice. It feels great in the hand. But I did want to ask you,
yeah,
for those that might not know what micarta is, maybe we can talk a little bit about that. What is that material made of? How does it come to end up on a handle? And what's the durability of it?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so micarta is basically, it's like canvas plywood, if that makes sense. So if you think about, we have other composite materials like carbon fiber and G10 are the 2 that we work with primarily. This is similar to those in that it's a laminate material. So you have a lot of layers of the material compressed together. And then that's where you get this from. And so those are like canvas instead of carbon fiber or the G10 fiberglass. And so that's kind of how this works. As far as like durability, it's really good in an application like this where we have a steel liner underneath it. It's definitely not as rigid as carbon fiber. So like, would I want like a car made out of micarta? Probably not. But for a scale like this, where it's going to give you that extra grip and a really good texture, it's perfect. It's just what you want for a knife like this.
Excellent. Good to know. I'd never really heard about the design process or how they actually make the end product there. So that was good to know.
Yeah. Micarta is a really cool material. Okay. So speaking of micarta, we have our next round of import traditional knives. These are much more like your typical slip joint with the back spring in there. And what's really fun about these, 2 things. One, they're all based on and inspired by traditional knife patterns, but they're all unique. So like the lines and the curves on them, it's nothing that is out there. I mean, obviously the knife market is very vast. So there might be something somewhere in a corner of the internet that's similar to these, but as far as I know, these are completely unique in their design. Obviously inspired by traditional patterns that have been around forever, but very unique. Second thing that's really cool about these is that they also have a polished micarta handle scale on them, which is really fun. We thought, with the last set we did polished G10, and with this one we want it to stand out a little bit from that, so we're doing polished micarta, and it looks so good.
And there's 3 of those this year, correct?
That's right. We've got the Parley is the first one right here, or Parlay. There's some debate about how to pronounce that right. But anyways, that's this knife. We thought it was great because this feels like kind of a piratey knife, It's a single blade slip joint knife with that polished G10. And I love this one because it has almost kind of a cleaver style blade to it, as close as you can get to a cleaver with a traditional knife. And even with the handle design, it's a rugged traditional. I could definitely see, again, going back to that, like that fisherman, right? Working on the nets and like breaking open oysters and stuff like that. It seems like the kind of knife that you could use for that sort of thing, which I think is really fun. So that's the Parley. We also have the Allegory, which is a 2-blade knife inspired by a doctor's knife. So that's a long-standing traditional knife pattern. And what makes those stand out, if you look at the pommel of the knife, the butt end here, the liners and the end caps there, those bolsters, are all made out of the same material, steel instead of brass. So that way it gives it a cohesive aesthetic on the back. So that way it looks like it's all one piece, and it's usually flat or mostly flat. So that way, back in the day, doctors would carry these, and if they were making like a medication for someone, they could use that into like a mortar and pestle, kind of crush that up. Obviously, this will do that. I'm not going to use it for that, but that's where the design comes from. So you got this beautiful clip point blade on the front right there with a nail nick. And then you've got a spear point blade behind it, same length blade on each of those. And these, with the import traditionals, they're all using 7CR17 MOV steel, which is the same that we used on the last run of traditionals that we made.
Yeah, that was a cool bit of information about the Dr. knife and using it like a mortar and pestle. I didn't know that. That's so cool.
Yeah, it's super fun. I've really, we've been working on traditionals for a few years now, and when we were first looking through it, some of the old patterns, that was one that really caught my eye, and I was like, oh, I want to do one of those someday. So I'm glad we got one that's, again, it's not exactly a doctor's knife, but it's inspired by that. So the next one. Yeah.
And sorry to cut you off, but you know what, I love the fact that we've brought back, starting, last year, the year before with the Culpeper and the Brandywine, and now we're adding to it with these three, is because those, like you said, there's so much history in that style of knife. If you go back to the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, all the way even, I think, into the 80s, really, your manual slip joint traditional knife was the dominant pocket knife that people carried. If you didn't carry a fixed blade, for the most part, that's the style of knife that you carried. And they didn't go away, but they certainly were less prevalent in the marketplace. And I feel like they're making a little bit of a resurgence, and it's nice to see them back in the catalog.
Absolutely, dude. It's definitely worthy of bringing back. I think there's a good reason why people carried them. And one of the reasons why they carried them is because they had like multiple blades of different shapes. And I think the IREDALE is a really great example of that one. This one's actually named, again, I'm going to go back to the fisherman concept one more time. On the coast of Oregon, up near Astoria, there's this really cool shipwreck called the Peter Iredale shipwreck. And so if you imagine, for our viewers that don't live in Oregon and aren't familiar with it, if you imagine like the skeleton of this old ship, it's all like rusted and it's just like in the sand. Really, really cool story. And so we kind of wanted to have like a callback to, we're an Oregon company, and so we wanted to have a callback to that. So this is the IREDALE. Again, pretty similar to, I think, like a Stockman pattern, but the lines and all super unique, and I'm really happy with how this one turned out as well. We've got a clip point blade on there as your primary blade. Then we also have a sheep's foot or a Warncliffe blade on the back there. I know those aren't the same thing. This is somewhere in between those two. I think so often when we're talking knives, I never know what the blade shapes are, but this is something in between those two. And then the last one, we've got this really small one that's really similar to that. This is about a 1.6 inch blade, I think. So just see if you're like, a really small knife for some tasks that, I don't know if you're cleaning a pipe or getting dirt out from under your fingernails, or I don't know, I'm sure you could use it to like strip wires too, whatever. But I think one of the reasons, that the traditional knives have a lasting legacy is because they're so useful for so many different things. And this is definitely one that exhibits that really well.
Yeah, what I like about that a lot is, like we just talked about, there's so much history in that style of knife. Yeah. And then you use the name of a shipwreck that has a lot of history to it here locally for us. So that's really cool.
Let's make a hard pivot. We're going to go from some super like old school knives to something that's like super new and pretty different with our Project Adam knives. We've got two of those this year. We've got the Kershaw Interval, and we have the Kershaw Electron. So these knives are super unique. They are made of, they're polymer blend knives. They're not made out of steel, and they actually don't even have a sharp edge. There's a lot of other tasks out there that don't require that. And these are for those. They do have steel inlays on the inside of them that are integral to the knives. But they're super different. Interestingly enough, the Electron was actually inspired by super old school, like pre-CIA, like World War II spies, kind of like lapel dagger type knives. Was inspired by that. And then the Interval is it's a 3.5 inch blade knife that is going to be useful from, I don't know. I think if I was going to use this, I would probably take it out and go like spread some peanut butter on a sandwich with it, but I think there's like, I don't know, like there's a lot of things, if you're out camping or whatever, that like you need a knife. You want a knife that's not going to rust, right? And you want a knife that is, I don't know. I don't want to spread peanut butter with my Launch 14, And so I think that these serve like, I don't know, there's a lot of uses that you can put that towards.
Yeah, I agree with you. There's a lot of different ways you can use these. At home, I have one. We have a bin for all our mail. I don't open up all the mail every single day, so sometimes it gets collected. And I like using one of those because of the fact that it doesn't have an edge that I'm eventually going to have to resharpen.
Yeah.
I do enjoy resharpening, but I don't like to have to do it all that often. And it's great. You can go through a bunch of letters with that. You don't have to worry about it. Also, I keep one in the garage. You know, in the summer we put mulch in our front yard, and they're great just to have to stab into the, you know, the plastic mulch and just rip down the front of it. You don't have to worry about it getting dirty or getting your opening mechanism gritty, things like that. I think there's a lot of different creative ways to use these. It's just about what fits with your life, you know. And like you said, they're non-corrosive. They're really inexpensive. So you can put them anywhere you want. You can use them, and you know, really, worst case scenario, if, for example, you're in your garage and somebody approaches you and is trying to, you know, get into your house or something like that, last resort, they would work as a self-defense tool as well. Not really the intended design behind them, but that just shows the depth of use that really is there for something that's so simple.
For sure. Yeah. I love from a design standpoint too. These are like, they're really simple, but they're beautiful knives. I love the texture on the interval is just, it's phenomenal, you know. And even like the way the lanyard holes are integrated, and that you can see a little bit of steel peeking through there. It makes them really interesting. And yeah, they're definitely definitely really cool items.
Yeah, and I like the whole the Project Atom, the theme behind it. Maybe just rehash that for our viewers. I think we talked about that briefly. You kind of touched on it, but why did the Project Atom become the family name for that?
Yeah, for sure. We call it Project Atom because they're just really lightweight. You know, super lightweight knives, and that's something that we really wanted to like emphasize as an aspect of the product.
Yeah, and they certainly are lightweight. And also, just to touch on why you said the steel embedded in the models is, we really don't want, obviously, people thinking that they can, you know, sneak them on a plane or through a metal detector like that. That's not the intended design. They're really utilitarian, like I said, and so, yeah, find some creative uses for them and let us know.
Last but not least, we've got the Kershaw RBK2. So this is kind of an addition to our outdoor hunting line. We've had the RBK out for a while, but we wanted to refresh it aesthetically, ergonomically, and we made some improvements functionally. But actually, I want to hear more of your thoughts on this, Dom, because I, you know, got to work some on this and had a blast doing it, but I'm not a hunter. You are. What's your take on this one?
Sure, yeah, the replaceable, RBK stands for replaceable knife, or actually replaceable blade knife, sorry there, which, you know, like you said, you can swap the blades out on it. So a lot of times when you are in the field hunting and you get an animal on the ground, especially a big animal like an elk or a bear or even a big mule deer, something like that, it takes you hours to really get the meat off the bone and get it packed out back to your house or back to camp. And so at night, it can be difficult to sharpen a knife. And granted, you know, we have some blade steels that hold an edge for a long time. But when you're breaking down the meat from an animal, you're making a lot of cuts, and you're making a lot of cuts through very dense, tough material. Specifically, you know, deer elk hide is very thick. It can dull a knife very quickly. And so the marketplace wanted a solution where people didn't necessarily have to sharpen a knife right in that moment. And that's where this comes in at. You get like, you know, multiple blades with that. And if it's starting to get dull, you can slide the blade off, put another blade on, and you keep working. You don't have to worry about sharpening or carrying multiple knives. And it just makes it much more efficient time-wise for you to get that meat cooled down and ready to go into a freezer.
Solid. Thanks for speaking to that, man. Yeah, I just want to highlight some of the things like we refreshed on this, right? So we had the RBK, and it's, as you mentioned, it's super useful, especially if you got to get a lot of work done quickly and you don't have time to resharpen the knife that you've got on you. So this still has that scalpel blade on there. You got an SK4 scalpel blade on there. And then we refreshed it in the sense of it fits a lot more aesthetically in line with like our Deschutes hatchet or our Taskmaster saw, fits in really well with those, but also ergonomically, that's for me, like that really makes this one stand out. We've got a lot of jimping along the handle here, and we have these rubber overmolded sections so that if you need like a really good grip on it. This is a knife that's going to be really comfortable. And even if your hands are wet or you have gloves on, you should be able to get a really good grip on this, which I think is really important if you're breaking down an animal after a hunt. The last thing I really wanted to call out with this one is we have this new, what I'm calling a lift liner. I don't think we have a specific name for it yet, but basically we've put a little bit of steel in between you and the blade. On the last RBK, it's definitely usable. I've taken the blades off of those many times and haven't cut myself, fortunately. But as I was doing that, I thought, you know, we could probably make this a little bit better, right? So we've got this steel liner under here, and you just lift up under the steel liner and the blade comes right off. You can see that liner right there, just in this section right in here. And then on the back, we have a glass-filled nylon pad that you press on that. So it just makes it better, makes it easier, quicker. You don't have to think about it when you're taking it off. And the risk of you potentially, you know, cutting yourself is a lot less. You know, it's been great when I was, you know, we get to do a little bit of like product testing with this. And I tried even just like getting like dish soap like all over my hands and still opening this and taking the blades off. And I was able to, you know, lift that liner up and get the blade off there without cutting myself really easily. And that was really great. So yeah.
Yeah, you know, I've used it several times in the field, and like you said, you know, when you're breaking down an animal after a hunt, you're either wearing latex gloves that are bloody, or your hands themselves are bloody, and that can be a slippery, you know, pretty slippery. So it's nice that you have such the material where you have a good non-slip grip the entire time, and then like you're saying with the release for the blade, if nothing else, it's a good peace of mind. Because when you're in the field, out here in the West, I know in the Midwest and the East Coast, it's a little different, you know, but sometimes on an elk hunt, you're hours away from being able to get help. And so if you do cut yourself, you know, pretty badly, you can be in a bad spot pretty quick. So it's nice that you just have that added safety element there.
Yeah, I think it makes it a much better product. And so we're really stoked to be releasing this. It also, like the original RBK, does come with the sheath. It also comes with a buddy handle. So if you're out, you know, backpacking with a buddy and you need an extra hand helping you skin or work on that animal, you've got that. And then it also comes with 15 replaceable blades, which is obviously super useful. So you don't have to go out and, you know, you want more than one, obviously, when you're carrying it. That's the point. So we provide you with plenty of blades there. So yeah, that's the Kershaw RBK2. That's all that I got. You got any more questions for us, Don?
Well, one more point on the buddy handle there. That way, if your buddy brings a dull knife or says he forgot his knife trying to get out of helping you, no excuse now.
That's right. That's right.
But yeah, no, that's great information. Thank you for sharing that with our viewers. And viewers, don't go away just yet. Andrew is going to jump down into the chat window and answer some of your questions. So if we didn't cover something that you want to know, or you just have something you'd like additional information on, put it in the chat box, and he'll be down in there in a few minutes and picking out some questions and answering them. And also, I want to remind everybody, this is not everything for 2022. So if there's something that you're still looking for something, you didn't, you know, fall in love with any one of these models, stay tuned. There will be additional releases throughout the year. This is just the first one. So Andrew, thanks for your time. Thanks for sharing a little bit of behind the curtains knowledge with everyone. And yeah, we're going to have some more excellent guests throughout the week, but you were the first, and really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you, Dom.